The Pokemon franchise may be known for spreading positivity and smiles worldwide with its lighthearted anime, addictive video games, endless trading cards, and tons of merchandise, but beneath that cheerful exterior lies a surprising amount of dark and grotesque lore, from sinister Pokédex entries to stories of Pokemon being mutilated, and most recently, leaks revealing humans, doing the hibbity-dibbity with Pokemon. Yeah, that Game Freak leak was insane. Of course, we can't forget about the dark history and rumors surrounding locations like Lavender Town, which is the subject of today's video. Pokemon is one of my favorite IPs, and surprisingly, I haven't really talked about it much in my videos, but with Halloween right around the corner, I thought it would be fun to explore the haunting history of Lavender Town. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and comment below if you would like me to dive into more dark Pokemon lore. But with all that said, let's jump right into it. Towards the right side of the Kanto region lies a small village known as Lavender Town. This town, famous for various ghost sightings, includes the Name Raiders House, the Lavender Volunteer Pokemon House, which is basically an orphanage for Pokemon, a residential home, a Pokemon Center, a Pokemart, and of course, the infamous Pokemon Tower. The tower is basically a graveyard where deceased Pokemon are laid to rest, where ghost-type Pokemon roam the floors, and where the spirits of long-gone Pokemon sometimes guard the tower from uninvited guests. Now, it is worth noting that depending on which game version you're playing, Gold, Silver, Crystal, or Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Pokemon Tower is replaced with the Kanto Radio Tower, and all graves are either moved to the House of Memories or buried underground. Anyways, speaking of the spirits of deceased Pokemon, let's talk about the in-game lore of the tower. So in the Gen 1 games, Team Rocket hunts Cubone for its valuable skull, which they intend to sell for profit. One Cubone survives thanks to its mother, a Marowak, who tragically dies while protecting her baby from the organization. Her ghost now haunts the Pokemon Tower, which has recently been taken over by Rocket Grunts. Players equipped with the Sylph Scope, a device used to identify ghosts, can reveal the Marowak's spirit. Now interestingly, in the original games as well as Fire Red and Leaf Green, players must battle Marowak's ghost in order to set her free. However, in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, once the Sylph Scope reveals her, she peacefully departs without a fight. All the while, Mr. Fuji, head of the Lavender Volunteer House, is trapped at the very top of the tower by Team Rocket. After Marowak's ghost finds peace, players defeat Team Rocket, and a grateful Mr. Fuji rewards them with the Poke Flute. Now, obviously, there are a few other differences between how the story plays out between the original games and the Let's Go versions, but the general idea is that Team Rocket is bad, the tower is haunted, and you, the player, make things right. Speaking of differences, how does the anime compare? So not only is Lavender Town shown in the video games, but it's of course depicted in the Pokemon anime as well, specifically the Indigo League Season 1 episode, The Tower of Terror, and the Pokemon Origins episode, File 2, Cubone. In The Tower of Terror, Ash is struggling to beat gym leader Sabrina because he doesn't have a ghost-type Pokemon to counter her psychic team, so he heads to the Pokemon Tower to catch one. Now in this adaptation, the tower isn't a graveyard, but rather an old structure with an interior that kinda looks like an abandoned house. Ash eventually encounters Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar, who enjoy playing tricks on visitors, and of course having fun. God, I forgot how good the early seasons of Pokemon were. Like for example, at one point in this episode, a chandelier falls on Ash and Pikachu, and Haunter just casually rips their souls out of their bodies, and it's just crazy to me that in the Pokemon universe, a Haunter could quite literally snatch your soul right out of your body like that. That's just nuts to butts in my opinion. At the very end, Haunter decides to tag along with Ash for his battle with Sabrina, which doesn't go exactly as you'd expect. You'd have to watch the following episode to learn more. Meanwhile, Gengar and Ghastly stay back at the tower to hang out with their new friends, Team Rocket. The Indigo League is pretty lighthearted, and there aren't many depressing or dark moments, whereas Pokemon Origins just punches you right in the gut. In File 2, Cubone, Red heads to Lavender Town and hears rumors of a ghost sighting at the Pokemon Tower from two people at the Pokemon Center who, surprise, turn out to be literal ghosts, Red is advised to visit the Pokemon house, where he learns the sad backstory of Cubone and the death of its mother at the hands of Team Rocket. Yeah, take that, you bastards! Mr. Fuji, who runs the volunteer Pokemon house, took in the baby Cubone, but he recently went to the tower to confront the Rocket Grunts, who have taken over, and he hasn't returned since. So, being the hero that he is, Red heads off to the tower to save Mr. Fuji and also confront the ghost, which turns out to be Marowak. Long story short, Cubone and its mother's spirits reunite for one last time before she passes on to the afterlife, and everything ends on a happy note. Rocket is defeated, visitors can return to the tower, Mr. Fuji gives Red the Pokeflute, and some Mega Stones as well, and Blue shows up to, well, he helps a little bit. Slightly off topic, but what I love about Pokemon Origins is how closely it follows the plot of the original games, and it does such an excellent job illustrating just how awful Team Rocket really are. I mean, these people just suck. I hate them so much, and I'm glad that I downloaded Gmod just to record this clip, because they piss me off. Besides the video games and anime, Lavender Town has, of course, appeared throughout various Pokemon manga adaptations as well, including the Red, Green, and Blue arc, The Electric Tale of Pikachu, Magical Pokemon Journey, and Pokemon Zen Show. While the stories surrounding the village differ across these adaptations, they all, for the most part, share one common trait. Lavender Town and the Pokemon Tower are always depicted as spooky. Speaking of spooky, Marowak's story and the lore of Pokemon Tower is pretty dark, especially for a franchise aimed at younger audiences, and that was pretty much the entire purpose of the town. Each town or city in Kanto had some kind of attraction, and Lavender Town's gimmick was to be the home for ghost-type Pokemon, as well as to be dark, creepy, ominous, and chilling with the Pokemon Tower, the lore, and the creepy soundtrack to accompany it. On top of that, Lavender Town is also one of the first places where players learn about the concept of death in the Pokemon universe, a concept that even Ash gets to experience firsthand, I think. Wait, how many times has he died? I feel like he's died a couple times. But as dark as the real lore is, it pales in comparison to the many creepypastas and urban legends that have sprung up over the years, like the infamous Lavender Town Syndrome myth, and of course its many spin-offs. A disturbing urban legend began circulating in the early 2010s, claiming that the high-pitched tones in Lavender Town's original Japanese Pokemon Red and Green music were responsible for a string of child deaths in Japan. According to the legend, these tones, which are only able to be heard by young children, supposedly caused severe side effects like headaches, insomnia, irrational behavior, brain hemorrhages, and in some cases, self-destruction. And allegedly, the game developers quietly adjusted the song's frequency in later versions of the game to prevent further incidents. And apparently the government and Nintendo covered up the carnage. Fans took this myth further by creating spectrograms, which are just visual representations of sound waves, claiming that hidden images of ghosts and cryptic messages like "Leave Now," spelled using unknown Pokemon, appeared when the Lavender Town theme was analyzed. There are also multiple versions of this myth, like Lavender Town Red, which claims that the game's director, Satoshi Tajiri, wanted the tone in the red version of Lavender Town's theme to annoy children who picked it over green. And this reason is apparently linked to his childhood traumas involving the color red. Then there's The Missing Frequencies, which is a story about a sound designer who recreated the original tone of the Lavender Town song and died after listening to it. There's also Come Follow Me, which tells of a glitch in red and green that allegedly triggered many deaths in Japan. And of course, Lavender Town and Pokemon 731, which basically takes Lavender Town Syndrome and links it back to a programmer who was interested in brainwashing children for military reasons. And unfortunately for this guy, the plan ultimately backfired when the children began their self-destruction after hearing the song. There's also mention of a new species of Pokemon titled 731, which only appeared on corrupted game cartridges, and an unused ghost animation titled Haunting.swf. Another popular Lavender Town story revolves around a Pokemon named White Hand, and an NPC titled Buried Alive, which would battle the player at the top of the Pokemon Tower. The character, a zombie-like figure, would pull out a white hand, which is supposedly a flesh-decaying hand that would make anyone who saw it sick to their stomachs. If players lost the fight, they'd basically be eaten alive by the zombie, triggering a disturbing game over screen. However, if the player won, the game would just freeze. And according to the myth, Buried Alive was replaced by Marowak's ghost in the final version of the game. Now, I will say, the White Hand does come from a real place in Pokemon. There is an NPC in Lavender Town who mentions a white hand on the player's shoulders. The Ghost Lady in Pokemon Origins mentions the same white hand to Red. Now, Lavender Town Syndrome and the stories which spawned from it might sound far-fetched. Get it? Far-fetched? Alright, look, I don't need this. Lavender Town Syndrome and the other stories seem like a bunch of nonsense, and they are. Despite the eerie details, there's no concrete evidence to support the ideas, like that the Lavender Town theme caused harm. In fact, these stories are so easy to dismiss. I mean, for starters, there is no evidence in the game's code that suggests characters like Buried Alive were ever included. Also, the spectrograms, featuring hidden messages spelled out using unknown, are also pretty fake and very hilarious as well, considering unknown didn't debut until Gold and Silver, years after Gen 1. However, there are real-world events involving the Pokemon franchise that lend some plausibility to these creepypastas, like the infamous Electric Soldier Porygon episode of the Pokemon anime, which triggered seizures in over 600 Japanese children due to a scene with flashing lights. This incident led to the anime being put on hiatus for roughly 4 months. The episode was also pulled from television, never airing again in Japan or any other country for that matter. This real incident is often used to suggest that the Lavender Town Syndrome myth is real. Now, before I continue, I do want to give credit to a YouTuber named Golden Owl, who made an excellent breakdown to a Reddit thread regarding Lavender Town and its creepiness, and I'm going to be paraphrasing some of their points as to why Lavender Town Syndrome and some of the other stories that we've discussed were pretty believable at the time. What also kind of helped fuel these stories and rumors was the fact that the original Game Boy games were notoriously glitchy and broken. I mean, Jesus, you had Missing No, you had Glitch City, save files were always under the risk of being corrupted. I mean, these bugs, some of them pretty scary, kind of blurred the lines between reality and fiction for the most part. Nevertheless, these creepypastas and legends emerged during a time when social media was still young, slightly naive, and internet horror stories like Jeff the Killer and Eyeless Jack were rising in popularity. It was kind of tough to verify information regarding stories like these back in the day, unless you were one of those people who could instantly see how ridiculous some of them were, like Buried Alive and Lavender Town Red. But I will give credit where credit is due. Lavender Town, Pokemon 731, White Hand, all of these stories do an amazing job at their intended purpose, which is to be creepy, entertaining, and fool a decent amount of people. Pokemon's eerie elements, especially Lavender Town, have naturally been the focus of many internet horror stories. I mean, the franchise has an endless list of unsettling lore and history to base stories on, from Pokemon freezing people and displaying their corpses, to the infamous Electric Soldier Porygon incident, or glitches like Missing No. And I mean, Jesus Christ, if you want to be this guy, there's even a recent Typhlosion story tied to the Game Freak leaks, which I will say appears to have been lost in translation a little bit. It's supposedly based on a Japanese folklore about a Typhlosion saving a girl during a snowstorm, with the Pokemon acting as a stand-in for a shape-shifting yokai. Listen, if you are curious about this, Roltless on Twitter covered the details in a thorough Twitter thread. But you know what? After reading what came before this entire explanation, I can't really look at Typhlosion the same way anymore. The internet ruined him for me. Like, I hate the internet. Anyways, though these stories are just pure fiction, they really show how deeply Lavender Town has resonated with fans over the years. Whether it's the haunting theme song, the in-game lore, or the many creepypastas that sometimes blur the line between reality and fantasy, Lavender Town remains one of Pokemon's most infamous and enduring locations. And that, my friends, is the dark and disturbing history of Lavender Town, along with the creepy stories it inspired. Like I said, if you guys enjoyed this video and you would like to hear more eerie Pokemon lore or stories, feel free to drop your suggestions in the comments below, and of course, don't forget to leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, click the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload a brand new video, follow me on all of my social links, and join my Discord server. The links are in the bio below. Have a spooky day, everyone, but remember to sleep with one eye open tonight.